My parents treated my brother like a future star and blamed me when he lost his scholarship and crashed my car. They took on a huge debt to fix his mistake while I refused to help and walked away completely. I'm 23 male, the grad student who's been labeled a bad influence since birth. My younger brother Ethan, name-changed 18, was supposed to be the next big athlete headed to Duke, and my parents treated him like LeBron with a GPA. Then he couldn't lay off the weed, pointed a finger at me, and suddenly I'm the villain in a story where I wasn't even in the same zip code. What followed was equal parts ridiculous and honestly kind of hilarious. Buckle up, because karma showed up wearing steel-toed boots. So, a little background. When I was 16, I got grounded for being 30 minutes late. A few years later, when Ethan was finally old enough to start going out, he came home at 2 a.m. after some basketball victory hangout. And instead of punishment, my mom is literally in the kitchen at 2 in the morning making him pancakes, telling him he earned it. That's the difference between us in one snapshot. I sneeze wrong, and I'm the disappointment. Ethan screws up. He gets a bedtime snack and a pep talk. The golden child treatment was everywhere. Sports gear, attention, money, praise all went his way. Me. I learned early that trying to compete was like running a race where the other guy already has the medal around his neck. They were so locked in on building the perfect champion out of Ethan that I may as well have been a background character in my own family. Every weekend was some tournament 2 towns over. Every spare dollar went to his training camps, and every dinner conversation was a highlight reel of his stats. By the time it was my turn to head off to college, my parents basically shrugged and said, "Good luck." Hi. No savings account, no, we've been planning for this, not even a tour of campuses, nothing. If I wanted to go, it was on me. So I hustled. I applied for scholarships like it was a second job, stacked up part-time gigs during high school, and signed every loan form myself. I was literally sitting at the kitchen table filling out FAFSA paperwork while my parents were out at one of Ethan's late-night practices, texting the family group chat about how promising he looked. When the acceptance letters came in, my mom asked if I could maybe take a gap year to save money. Translation: we're not paying for it. So I gritted my teeth, cobbled it together with grants, and worked every summer. The tuition, the books, the rent, I covered all of it. If I wanted food in my fridge, it was coming from my paycheck, not theirs. And I'll never forget the irony. They were bragging to neighbors about how Ethan was destined for Duke, while their other son was busting his butt just to keep the lights on in his crappy student apartment. I didn't get a single dime for my education, not because they couldn't, but because every cent was tied up in gas money, trainers, and custom sneakers for the golden boy. So yeah, when I say I paid my own fees, I mean every darn one of them. Tuition, mine, fees, mine. Even the darn parking pass was on me. Meanwhile, Ethan got his SAT prep, paid for his meals planned out, and a personal chauffeur to practice. That's the level of imbalance we're talking about. Alright, so here's where things actually start rolling. Ethan's high school does this thing where they drug test kids at random. And by random, I mean random enough that it was finally Ethan's turn to pee in a cup. Now let me just say Ethan is not exactly a secret about his habits. The dude smokes. Not every day, but enough that anyone with eyes or a nose could guess. I knew it. Some of his teammates knew it. Heck, I'm pretty sure even the dog knew it. So boom. Test day. Positive for weed. Apparently Ethan tried to play it cool when they told him, but the school calls home anyway. Before my parents could hear it from anyone else, Ethan decides to get ahead of it by confessing, which in theory sounds smart, except instead of just owning it, he went full survival mode. So picture this. Ethan tells my parents, "Yeah, I tested positive, but it's not just me. Alex smokes too, and suddenly I'm on trial for something that happened few states away." Now here's the funny part. I haven't smoked in months. I've got an internship that does random testing, so I already quit for the summer. But that didn't matter because in my parents' brains, if Ethan screws up, it's automatically my fault. Like I was mailing him blunts from out of state or something. They lost their minds. Dad acted like Ethan had just turned into a career criminal. Mom went on about throwing away his future. But once Ethan dropped my name, the focus shifted real fast. Suddenly, I wasn't just the black sheep, I was the shepherd leading little lamb Ethan astray. See, Alex was always the bad influence. Ethan wouldn't be doing this if he didn't see you doing it first. I'm sitting there on FaceTime with them like, "Hello, I live 500 miles away." The last time I saw Ethan was Christmas, but nope. Logic doesn't matter when parents are in full panic mode. So then comes the grand punishment plan. Ethan, he has to take some online drug counseling course. That's it. Pretty much a PowerPoint slideshow with some guy droning about the dangers of weed. He clicks through it while eating chips and calls it a day. Me. They decide they're going to drug test me too. To be fair, their words not a joke. I live in another state, pay my own bills, do my own thing, and they want to randomly drug test me whenever I come home, like I'm still 16 sneaking beers in the basement. And here's the kicker. If I fail their little home drug test, they'll take away my car. Now, to be clear, it's technically theirs. They gave it to me when I started grad school because I couldn't afford one, but I cover all the costs, gas, insurance, maintenance. They don't put a dime into it. Still, they held on to that "we own it" card like it was the nuclear codes. I actually laughed when they said it. My mom tried to act tough, but then she slipped and said she'd probably tell me in advance before they tested me. Like, what's even the point at that stage? It's not drug testing. It's just playing pretend. Meanwhile, Ethan's sitting in the background looking smug as heck. Dude just ratted me out and now he's watching me get dragged. He's got this little smirk like he just pulled the heist of the century. I wanted to reach through the screen and smack him. Ethan's punishment was basically a slap on the wrist. The school wasn't going to call the cops or anything. No record, no suspension. He just had to click through his counseling course and that was it. Done. Over. But my parents acted like his life was hanging by a thread. And mine was the scissors. Every time Ethan made a face or looked upset, they'd remind me how I set a bad example. Like, nah, the kid failed a test because he's dumb enough to smoke when he knows he could be called. That's not on me. And the thing is, Ethan knew exactly what he was doing. He used me as a shield. Threw me under the bus to make himself look less bad. And it worked, at least in the short term. My parents bought it because of course they did. They always do. Suddenly the story wasn't Ethan failed a drug test. The story was the school system is unfair and Alex probably corrupted him. They were telling relatives that Ethan was so stressed from being scouted for sports. And of course kids make mistakes. But he still got such a bright future. Meanwhile, my name kept getting dragged into every sentence like I was Voldemort. You know Alex smoked too. That's where Ethan got the idea. Ethan's just under pressure because he's chasing scholarships. Alex never understood that kind of pressure. It was like they were rewriting history in real time, turning Ethan into the victim and me into the bad guy. And the crazy thing, they actually seemed proud of him for owning up to failing the test. Like, he was brave, bro. He only confessed because the school already had the pee in the cup. Every phone call from my parents had the same vibe. Scold Alex, reassure Ethan. My mom literally said to me, "We just want to make sure you don't drag your brother down with you." I'm in a whole other state pulling 60-hour weeks at my internship clean as a whistle because I have to be for my job. But sure, I'm the one sabotaging his varsity career from afar, apparently using telepathic blunts. And then came the big one, college acceptance season. If there's one thing you need to know about my parents, it's that Ethan's college prospects were their entire personality. My dad would bring it up in line at the grocery store. "Yeah, my younger boy's got scouts from Duke calling him. Full ride, you know. Oh, and my older son's in grad school somewhere too." They weren't just bragging either. They'd been grooming him for this Duke program since he could dribble. My mom turned into a full-time chauffeur, shuttling him to private trainers, weekend tournaments 3 towns over, and nutritionists who charged more per hour than I make in a week. Dad was out in the driveway at 6 in the morning, rebounding shots for him, rain or shine, like he was coaching the Lakers instead of a lanky teenager with a half-decent jump shot. Every family decision, vacations, finances, even what kind of car to buy, revolved around what's best for Ethan's future. If he had a game, we all had to cancel plans. If he had practice dinner, waited. The message was loud and clear. His education and basketball dreams weren't just his priority, they were everyone's priority. They had him on this pedestal so high, I'm surprised he didn't get altitude sickness. His scholarship was the crown jewel, the ticket that proved they raised him right, and that all those years of ignoring me had been the correct parenting strategy. So after the drug test fiasco, they went into full PR mode. They started monitoring Ethan like hawks, but also protecting him at every turn. "We're not going to let one slip-up ruin everything." My mom would say like the universe had conspired against him. And I mean, I get it. Drugs and sports don't exactly mix. One bad test can tank your eligibility, and colleges like Duke aren't about to risk their program's reputation on a kid who can't keep it clean. My dad read one article about athletes losing scholarships over weed and acted like Ethan had been caught trafficking heroin across state lines. Suddenly, his biggest fear wasn't that his son was messing up his own health. It was that their golden ticket to a free education might disappear. So what do? Do they sit Ethan down and tell him to grow up? Of course not. Instead, they start rewriting the narrative. They told the school it was just a false positive. They told the neighbors that kids make mistakes. And when it came to explaining why Ethan might have tried weed in the first place, oh, they had the perfect scapegoat. Me. You know Alex was smoking too. That's probably where Ethan picked it up. Ethan's just under pressure because he's chasing Duke. Alex never understood that kind of responsibility. Problem was, everyone knew he'd been smoking. The lie was never going to hold up if anyone looked closer. I swear they were bending reality in real time. Somehow Ethan failing a test became another opportunity to remind me that I was the family disappointment. The messed up part, Ethan loved it. He was walking around the house like he'd pulled off some heroic sacrifice instead of just failing a basic urine test. He even said to me on FaceTime, smirking, "They think you're the reason I tried it. Thanks, man. You really took the bullet for me." Yeah, buddy. Keep thinking that. Keep smoking too. Because while they were treating you like a misunderstood prodigy, I knew something you clearly didn't. Those top athletic programs test harder than your high school ever did. And unlike mom and dad, they don't make excuses. And here's the part that really made me laugh. They were still threatening to drug test me every time I came home. Like Ethan's the one who failed, but I'm the one who might lose my car if I don't pee in a cup on command. That's like if your dog pees on the carpet and your parents put you in the crate. The irony wasn't lost on me. The kid who actually failed was coddled while I was hundreds of miles away, and somehow the bigger threat. Meanwhile, Ethan was living it up. He knew he was untouchable. You could see it in the way he carried himself. Smug cocky, like he'd found a cheat code. He even joked about it to me once on FaceTime. "Man, thanks for taking the heat. They really think you're the bad guy." I wanted to choke him through the screen, but here's the thing. I didn't even need to say anything. I knew something he didn't. Colleges, especially the ones offering full rides for athletes, don't play around with drug tests. I'd already had to pee in a cup for my internship. I told him straight up, "Bro, you better chill. They're going to test you when you get there." He laughed it off. "Relax, they want me. They'll look the other way. You're just jealous." Yeah, okay, sure. Because that's how college athletics works. They just wink when you show up smelling like Snoop Dogg's tour bus. So I just let him talk because I knew this was one of those situations where you don't need to say much. You just wait. And trust me, the wait wasn't long. So fast forward a couple months. Ethan's senior year is wrapping up, and my parents are basically treating him like he's already on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Every phone call I get from my mom is the same script. Ethan's coaches are so proud of him. Ethan's scholarship is practically guaranteed. Ethan's going to do what you never could, Alex? Cool. Meanwhile, I'm grinding through grad school and a brutal internship that actually does drug test me. But whatever, I just keep my head down. Anyway, his dream college requires all incoming athletes to pass a physical and a drug screening. Shocker, right? I warned him months before. Dude, they test you. Don't be stupid. He smirked and hid his vape like he was starring in a PSA for bad decisions. Then came the letter trademark. My mom was hyped, saying the school emailed Ethan and wanted to schedule his test. She's on the phone with me all giddy talking about how this is just a formality and they can't wait to send out the acceptance party invites. I just said, good luck with that because what else am I supposed to do? Sure enough, Ethan fails. Not like borderline fails, full-on fails. Dude probably hotboxed the bathroom before the test. When my mom called me after, I swear she sounded like she just watched her favorite football team lose the Super Bowl in overtime. They took back the scholarship. They said they can't offer him a spot on the team anymore. I literally had to put the phone down because I started laughing. Not a little chuckle either. Full laugh, like Joker, in the alley laugh. Of course, my parents didn't find it funny. Dad went off about how these schools are too strict and how Ethan's whole future is being ruined by one mistake. Keep in mind, this is the second test he's failed in like 3 months. But sure, just one mistake. And guess what? They still somehow made it my fault. Ethan couldn't pass the blame, but my parents looked me dead in the eye and said I'd probably been a bad influence on him. Like, never mind the fact that I'd been off at school 2 states away grinding just to cover my own tuition and rent without a dime of help from them. Apparently, Ethan failing a drug test was because of me. And then, as if that wasn't insulting enough, my dad actually had the nerve to suggest that I should give them money so they could make a donation to Duke University and smooth things over with admissions. That was his grand plan, not to hold Ethan accountable, not to let him face the consequences, but to try and buy his way back into Duke with my hard-earned cash. It wasn't that they had no money, it was that every extra dollar went straight into Ethan's sports pipeline. Priorities, not poverty. Ethan, meanwhile, was devastated. Not because he regretted smoking. Nah, he was pissed he got caught. He stomped around the house like Thanos just snapped his scholarship away. My parents were acting like the world ended. I guess in their heads it did because their golden child's whole identity was tied to that scholarship. They had been bragging about it for months, told every neighbor, every distant cousin, probably the cashier at Target. Now they had to face the music. I heard my mom crying in the background about how embarrassing it was to call Aunt Karen and admit Ethan wasn't going to dream you after all. It hit me right then. This wasn't even the end. This was just the start of the crash because my parents weren't about to accept that their golden boy had messed up his own life. No, they were about to go full ride or die to keep him on that pedestal. A week later, my dad calls me up. He's got that fake calm voice he uses when he knows something is bad, but wants to spin it like it's no big deal. He goes, "So, we've been talking with Duke's admissions office. You know the idea we talked about earlier? They said, if we make a generous enough donation, they'll probably overlook this little hiccup with your brother." I laughed because I thought he was joking. Like, haha, good one, Dad. But nope. He doubled down. He actually followed it up with, "We're going to need you to pitch in since you're not doing anything important with your money anyway. You've been paying your own way through grad school, right? Well, just think of it as helping your brother get the future he deserves." I just sat there in silence for a second, my brain buffering like an old dial-up modem. They never gave me a single dime for college. I worked 2 jobs, ate ramen for dinner 4 nights a week, and juggled classes with night shifts just to keep the lights on. And now, after years of ignoring me and throwing every spare penny at Ethan's sports obsession, they wanted me to cough up the little I had so they could bribe Duke to take him back. I told him flat out, "No, absolutely not. I paid for my education on my own because you wouldn't help me, and I'm not about to fund Ethan's second chance because he couldn't stop smoking weed for a month." That's when my dad lost it. He snapped, started yelling that I should be ashamed of myself for not standing by my family. Ashamed. The man who sat through every single one of Ethan's games and couldn't even tell you what I majored in was suddenly lecturing me about family loyalty. The sheer audacity of that phone call. I had to hang up before I said something I couldn't take back. And they did. Took out a loan, co-signed everything, and started panicking about interest rates like they just discovered math existed. Suddenly, every conversation with them is about how tight things are right now. And we all need to make sacrifices for the family. By we all, of course, they mean me. Because here's the thing. I'm in grad school on a full ride, but I still cover my own rent bills, groceries. I've been grinding this internship that actually pays, so I'm not calling home asking for money. But now my parents are telling me, "You should think twice about visiting home. Gas is expensive, Alex." Which is hilarious because I pay for my own gas. But apparently I'm supposed to feel guilty for not chipping into Ethan's tuition. Like I'm a selfish jerk for not offering up my grad school stipend to fund Golden Boy's backup plan. Meanwhile, Ethan's still puffing away. He's not even hiding it anymore. I heard from one of his friends that he literally went to a grad party the weekend after losing the scholarship and got high again. When I brought it up, he shrugged and said, "It's fine. Mom and Dad will take care of it." And he's right. They always do. Except now I can see the cracks forming. My mom's stressing about bills. My dad's suddenly working late even on Saturdays just to cover the payments. They're arguing with each other about money, which they never used to do in front of us. Ethan still gets defended, but you can tell even they're starting to realize he's a liability. The car situation was the cherry on top to help cover the new tuition payments. They sold Ethan's car, the one they bragged about buying him last year as our reward for being such a responsible young man. Ethan lost his wheels overnight. He was furious, sulking around yelling about how it wasn't fair, how he needed it for practice. Practice for what, bro? You lost your scholarship. Parents caved, of course. Promised they'd get him another one once the finances balanced out. Spoiler, the finances were not going to balance out. While all this was happening, I was stacking internship checks, saving planning. I'd already been eyeing a decent used car. Nothing flashy, just reliable. And the idea of having something in my name was the one thing keeping me sane. I hadn't pulled the trigger yet, but I was close. Every time my parents dangled the old car over my head, it just pushed me closer to saying, "Screw it, I'll get my own." Couple weeks later, I get a text from my mom. "Can you come home this weekend? We need to talk." Which in my family is basically code for, "We're about to make you responsible for something that isn't your problem." Against my better judgment, I drove the 8 hours back. I figured maybe they'd cooled off. Maybe, just maybe, they'd realized how insane it was to try and drug test me when I don't even live there. Spoiler, they hadn't. And honestly, I also saw it as the perfect chance to finally return the old car they'd given me back in undergrad. I didn't technically need it anymore. I'd been saving from my internship and already had my eye on a used car I could actually call mine, title and all. I hadn't bought it yet, but I was close. So I tossed the keys to the old one in my bag. If nothing else, I could drop it on their driveway and finally be done with their little power trip. I sit down at the kitchen table, and it feels like some kind of low-budget courtroom. Mom's already teary-eyed. Dad's got that CEO about to fire you face, and Ethan's just lounging in sweatpants with his phone like he's about to get an award. Dad starts with, "We've been doing research," which in our house means he watched 3 YouTube videos and called a guy who knows a guy. He flips the folder open and lays out this plan like he's briefing a SWAT team. "Here's how we get Ethan back on track for Duke," he says. "Sports attorney on retainer, NCA, a compliance consultant to certify he's clean. 90 days at a performance rehab that specializes in elite athletes' weekly lab tests from an independent clinic and character letters from coaches. Package it right, and admissions will have to reconsider." He actually had numbers printed. The lawyer retainer was 5 figures. The rehab had a brochure with a waterfall on the cover and a slogan about reclaiming your edge. The compliance guy wanted a monthly fee that looked like a car payment. There was even a line item for a social profile scrub so the internet would forget Ethan ever existed at a party. Then Dad hits me with the closer like he's offering a deal. "We'll need you to help finance the first few months. Press pause on grad school, stack some cash, co-sign the private loan so we can move fast. And for transportation, let your brother use your grad car until he's stabilized. He has to get to rehab in the clinic somehow." I just stared at him. Stared at Tay. "You want me to drop out of grad school, co-sign debt for a lawyer and a consultant, and hand over the car so Ethan can do the bare minimum and pee in a cup on time?" Dad blinked like I'd missed the point. "Family steps up. You paid your own way. You can do it again. Your brother needs this." I said, "No wiggle room, no soft landing. I'm not putting school on hold. I'm not co-signing anything. As for the car, I came here today to give it back to you." He snapped. Full volume, open hands, the whole thing. "You should be ashamed. We're offering you a chance to fix what you started by being a bad influence, and you can't even do that. We'll take a loan without you. Cool? Do that." Dinner was silent after that. Mom sniffled into her napkin. Ethan smirked like he'd already won. I put my keys on the counter because my pockets were full and went to the guest room to grab my bag. Wasn't staying the night. 10 minutes later, I come back and the keys are gone. At first, I thought Dad pocketed them to prove a point. Then I heard the engine outside my engine and tires chirping like someone who's watched way too many car clips. I hit the front door just in time to see the car turn at the end of the street way too fast for a residential block. Mom goes, "He just needs it for the clinic." Like that explained why her son, with a history of failing drug tests, was riding a car at 9:40 p.m. on a Sunday. I took Dad's truck, didn't ask, and followed the route to the main road. Night air, empty lanes, and then hazard lights up ahead. Crowd of kids in hoodies, one of them waving his arms. The car was nose first into a light pole. Hood folded, smoke hissing. Both airbags popped like busted marshmallows. Ethan was on the curb clutching his leg and swearing pupils dinner plate big, reeking like a skunk rolled through a pine forest. One of his buddies kept saying, "Bro, you said you were fine to drive." EMTs strapped him to a board. The officer asked whose car it was. I said, "My parents." He asked if Ethan had permission to drive it. I said, "No." He took the keys without asking. He wrote things down without looking at me like he'd seen this movie 100 times. At the ER, the doctor came in with the imaging and didn't bother doing the gentle talk. Tibia and fibula. We'll need to pin it, he'll walk again, but competitive athletics isn't realistic. Mom started bargaining with a surgeon like it was a customer service desk. Dad paced, red-faced, already muttering about bills. Ethan went quiet, which was new. Insurance. The policy didn't cover it, so there was no payout and no deductible, though the premium still jumped after the accident report. And that rehab waterfall brochure, nobody was flipping it open anymore. Back at the house, Dad tried one last swing at me. If you had just helped earlier, I cut him off. Your plan was a lawyer, a consultant. My plan was accountability. Only one of those works when he's high behind the wheel. He didn't answer. Couldn't really. In the end, they didn't get a single dime from me. I stuck to my no, and that was that. So they went ahead and took out the loans on their own, stacked them right on top of the ones they already had for Ethan's backup school, plus the surgery bill, plus the insurance premium spike from the crash. By the time it was all said and done, they were drowning in debt. All self-inflicted. All because they refused to let Ethan face reality. Thanksgiving rolled around, and honestly, I wasn't planning on going. After the whole pause grad school and bankroll your brother's miracle package stunt, I figured I'd earned the right to ghost them until Christmas at least. But then my aunt called. She's the only one in the family who actually checks on me without an agenda. "Come by," she said. "We all want to hear about your new job." So I drove down in my new car. This one was fully mine. No strings, nobody holding it hostage. And this time nobody could take the keys unless they grew an extra pair of hands while I slept. When I pulled up, Ethan was already visible through the living room window, sprawled on the couch with his brace propped up on a pillow. He looked miserable, and not in the poor kid. What a tragedy way. More like he'd just realized the world wasn't going to bend for him anymore. Inside, the vibe was weird. Normally, family gatherings were basically highlight reels of Ethan's future. Dad bragging, Mom gushing, Ethan grinning like a politician at a fundraiser. This year, silent. My dad looked 10 years older. Mom had stress lines carved into her forehead, and Ethan barely said a word. Dinner starts. People make small talk. My uncle, the one who doesn't sugarcoat anything, finally asks, "So how's Duke? Thought you guys were all set." You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Mom fiddled with her napkin. Dad cleared his throat and mumbled something about plans. Is changing and exploring other opportunities. Meanwhile, Ethan stared at his plate like the mashed potatoes had all the answers. Then my aunt, bless her, decides to stir the pot. She looks right at my dad and goes, "So how's all that tuition working out? Must be tough with Duke off the table." You could have heard a pin drop. My dad's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Mom started rearranging the green beans like they were suddenly the most fascinating thing in the world. Ethan shifted on the couch, his brace clunking against the coffee table. Dad clears his throat. We've had to make some financial adjustments, loans, but it's an investment." He said investment like he was pitching Shark Tank, but his eyes looked tired like a guy who's been calculating interest rates on the back of junk mail. Aunt just raised her eyebrows. Loans for Duke when he's not even going there. She didn't even sugarcoat it. That's something. You could practically see Dad shrink 2 inches in his chair. My mom mumbled something about how Ethan's worth it. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there quietly chewing on turkey, watching the whole empire of denial collapse in front of extended family. And then the twist of the knife. Aunt turned to me. "Alex, you're finishing grad school soon, right? Didn't you just get a job offer?" I nodded. Laid it out, plain. The position, the salary, the benefits. Having a better job that pays very well. "That's fantastic, honey. You must be so proud." I glanced at my dad and caught it. That jaw clench. The look of a man realizing the lazy disappointment he ignored was the only kid actually standing on his own 2 feet. Meanwhile, his star athlete was busted up on the couch bleeding money, no Duke, no scholarship, no car, no future. After dinner, I set my keys on the counter while grabbing pie. Same spot Ethan had swiped them from months earlier. Nobody touched them this time. Everyone knew whose they were. Ethan muttered something under his breath about, "Must be nice." I didn't bite. Didn't need to because the scoreboard was right in front of us. Ethan, no Duke, no scholarship, no car, no sports career. Parents drowning in debt from lawyers, rehab consultations, surgery and loans. Me, grad school on track, job locked in, car in my name, nobody is holding it hostage, no gloating necessary. I just grabbed my coat, jingled my keys loud enough for Ethan to hear and left. Driving home, I realized something. My parents always said Ethan was the future and I was the mistake. They built their whole lives around protecting him, fixing him, paying for him, and all it got them was a broken leg, a wrecked car, and years of debt. Me, I was the black sheep, the afterthought, the kid who had to figure it out alone. And because of that, I'm the only one who doesn't need rescuing now. Funny how that works out.